But for many families and couples, August is it's a time for fun, right? A lot of fun-filled family activities. And then for some, well, there might be some big changes ahead. Are they related? Well, let's find out. Tracey Coates, leading divorce attorney and podcast host, back with us to talk about why divorce filings tend to elevate a little bit in August. First of all, great to see you again, Tracey.
Always great to see you.
So we've heard like the holiday rush, the post-holiday rush, like January. A lot of times people will file after they get through the holidays, maybe with the families or the kids.
Absolutely.
Why August, though?
Well, you know, even though it's not the end of the calendar year, it quite literally and figuratively is the end of a season. You know, people are coming back from vacation, they're closing up their beach and their lake houses, they're coming back from the Vineyard or the Hamptons. Kids are off to school, and it's similar to January that people just don't want to go through another holiday season, or this is time for them to sort of make new changes and back to school and back to a new life.
All right, if somebody is doing that, and this is where you come in as the expert, if the filings happen in August, when do you prepare for that? I mean, is this the kind of thing where typically it's just like, okay, I had one last awful family vacation, that was the final straw, we're doing this, or is it something that you kind of have to have months to prepare for?
You know, it's both. So I do have clients that come into me before the summer season kicks off, and we really talk about strategy. One of the things that I think is really important, because people come in, you know, very infrequently do people come to my office and just want to fight. More often people want to have an amicable divorce, which means that they really want to settle. So we come in, and that's where I come in. I talk to them, we strategize, because I think sometimes people think you can't strategize and still want to have a peaceful divorce, but the opposite is quite true. So yes, I mean, it can happen, but also it can happen afterwards. But either way, you definitely need to plan.
Sometimes one person wants the peaceful solution, the other might not want the peaceful solution,
true.
and that's where you have that, you know, it gets a little tough sometimes. You kind of equate this, though, to you're essentially suing your spouse. I mean, you treat this like it is the court proceeding that it often ends up being, right?
It is. I think people forget, or they don't understand, that filing for divorce is really a lawsuit. You are suing your spouse to dissolve your marriage. And with that comes a whole host of different deadlines and hearings and court appearances that really do need to be taken into account in order for the divorce process to move. Because once a divorce is filed, it's very hard for the train to come back to the station. That is the only thing a court knows to do, is to set it for litigation and to set it for trial.
Do you find that sometimes, Tracey, because you deal with this a lot with a lot of couples, that most people, they're okay with that finality, right? That's why they're coming to see you. They know this is what they want. Or do you find some people that really are just like, I think it's what I want, I'm not really sure, and then you have to have that conversation about, well, final is final.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I always do tell people is that I can't make that decision for you, right? I think sometimes when people are in that I don't know stage, I really just want to make sure they have the information. That's why it's so important to go and meet with a lawyer, even for a consult if you don't decide to hire a lawyer, but really understand what your rights and obligations are with respect to a divorce, and then you have the ability to make an informed decision.
What is key to know, though? Because a lot of times it comes down to money, right? Money or property. So what do you need to know if you're considering going through the divorce process? Because you're going to end up with less than what you had going into it, right? Pretty much no matter what.
Pretty much no matter what. One of the things that you're starting with is pot of money. When you're an intact family, you have a pot of money. But once you decide to separate or get a divorce, you've got to figure out how to equitably divide this one pot of money. So you need to be thinking about what your lifestyle is, what your sources of income are, what bills and things that you have, private school tuitions, clubs and memberships that you belong to, and figure out a way really how that's going to look going forward, because you're absolutely right. You're not going to have that same pot of money when you are separating.
You talk about extremes. I mean, obviously, you think first about the cars, the houses, the physical properties, but then you're like, if you have club memberships or you have a beach house or you have anything else, that all comes into play.
Yes.
What about debts? If you're carrying a lot of debt, how does that get divided up?
It depends on what jurisdiction you're in terms of, you know, whose name is on the debt. It depends on what type of debt. Was it for marital purposes? Was it for non-marital purposes? All that does come into play, and if you can figure out a way to settle and figure out who takes which debt, wonderful. If not, at the end of this whole proceeding, when the court decides, the court will make a decision.
As far as time, what's the range you've seen start to finish as to how long it could take? You know, with maybe being done, everybody's on the same page versus a long, drawn-out battle.
You know, right now I have a case that I think I started last fall, and we just came to a resolution. An agreement will be signed. I've had another case that I started 3.5 years ago, and they just got divorced this past winter.
Wow.
So the time range really does depend. It depends on what you're fighting about and what you're willing to sort of concede to.
All right. Maybe people will be nicer on the August vacation next year just to make sure that they don't have to start that process. Tracey, it's always a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thank
and if
you
you want to find out much more, she has great social media as well. And, of course, the podcast, which you could just go to TraceyCoates.com. You'll find out all the information there. Really, really informative stuff. Tracey, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.